let's try that again. Hola.
Hola.
There we go. Okay, we're loud and proud. Love it. My name is Salgado, founder director of R.Evolución Latina. Yay. And I am extremely honored to have this panel, to have this conversation, and I'll make a quick intro as to why. The last 5 years we've been part of BroadwayCon, and every year, no matter what topic we have, ends up being that the conclusion is we need more writers. We need to tell our stories from our own perspectives. So this year I was like, how do we go about our panel? Do we start again in something that's going to end up at that, or do we just start at that, right? So we decided to bring a very diverse perspective on writers that will nurture why is it important today to be writing our own work, to be telling our own stories from our own angles. And so I will start with one of our greatest human beings, I think, that I will immediately go into that area. Alex Dinelaris, screenwriter, playwright, won a Golden Globe and Oscar for Berlin, writer of Undefeated Musical, and honestly one of the greatest humans you know. And in my pre-interview for this, I was extremely touched, not about his success, but about the tone of the humanity in every work he mentioned. And so I'm going to go into maybe different topics with him that we expect traditionally. So once again, Alex Dinelaris. I'm going to pass into our female representation today, Michelle J. Rodriguez, songwriter, musical theater composer, vocalist, and actress. She made her Joe's Pub debut with her original musical It's O West O, and made her public theater debut as a composer with the mobile units The Tempest. Michelle J. Rodriguez. Next, Eric Ulloa, my friend who worked with us in On Your Feet. I say to him, always I hear your last name as Ulloa, but no, it's Ulloa. Yes, and so author of 26 Pebbles, named one of the top 10 plays in 2017, and winner of the Kennedy Center Citizen Award. He also has been an assistant to Alex Dinelaris. Eric Ulloa. And last but not least, my friend, kind of brother from another mother, Jaime Lozano, who is really a comedian more than anything. A composer, arranger, orchestrator, music producer. He has over 3 albums that I have deeply listened to and that I invite you all to listen to, because he celebrates the story of the immigrant journey in almost all of them. And we're very, very proud of him. And he has a lot of other amazing credits, but I will say that I will give him the best credit I can today, which is, and I was telling Alex earlier this, I texted Alex Lackamore like a few weeks back, and I was like, hey Alex, what's going on? It's been 10 years since we did In the Heights, and still I cannot really find composers on Broadway other than you and Lynn. I need you to help me out. Please tell me that I'm wrong. And he's like, well, give me I'm talking about like Mark Anthony's music producer. Give me like some of the top-notch names, and among them we put Jaime Lozano. And I was so proud to hear his name next to everybody that Alex is recommending. So this is our amazing group of panelists, and what I want to keep it also really fun today, and we're going to start with icebreakers, if you allow me. So get ready to fire back quickly. I'm going to start with Alex. Cafe or tea? Cafe. There's, you guys can use your mics. Yeah. Let's do it again. Cafe or tea?
Cafe.
Great. Now a serious one. What is a writer?
Cafe. A writer is a paleontologist. You uncover the fossils and you figure out what's underneath, and then you show it to the world.
Wonderful. Michelle, strawberries or coconuts?
Ooh, strawberries.
Boom. Now, tell me, what is a heartbreaking lyric that has touched you in your life?
A heartbreaking lyric that has touched me in my life. Okay. A song my friend Michaela Morgan wrote. She wrote, I'm braver. I've been brave. I've been so brave, and please give me the chance to be braver. Really just.
Can you repeat it one more time?
Yeah. I'm being so brave. Please give me a chance to be braver.
Boom. Eric, mojitos o Cuba Libre?
Mojito.
Great. These questions end up being too easy for y'all. Now, best playwright of the last decade.
Best playwright of the last decade?
Yes.
Oh, you're killing me.
That's the point.
That's hard. Oh, God. Who's making? You know, honestly, I'll just say because he made me, his play recently made me think so deeply, and I've been holding it for weeks, was Jeremy O'Hara's slate play. I just left there and I'm still unpacking it, and I go, if I'm thinking about it 3 weeks later, something's going on here, and I want to hear more.
Boom. And last but not least, Jaime Lozano. Tacos o arepas?
Police. Tacos al pastor. Yeah.
Tacos al pastor. Now, your most influential composer.
Oh, wow. If I had to name just one, it would be Stephen Sondheim.
Why?
Why? Because he has both sides. He's vocally smart, and he can write from the heart. I think he has both sides. So I think it's something really, really hard to do when you're writing stories.
Great, thank you. So this is for the entire panel. From your own point of view, also still in the setting of the tone for today's conversation, what are 3 main ingredients you must have in order to write? 3 main ingredients. This is for all of you guys. You must have in order to write.
This is like rapid fire?
Sure.
Okay. I would say peace, an hour's time, and an open ear. That's what I need. That's what I need to be able to sit down and write something.
So my question is it to be able to do the work or to be a writer?
I think to be able to do the work.
Alcohol? Then I agree. Peace, because you have to get to the subconscious, so you have to be in some sort of serene state. That's all. I agree with everything else Michelle said.
And alcohol. Got it.
I would say chaos.
Chaos.
Yes.
Tell me more, sir.
We were talking right before, Michelle and I, when you're writing like 5 projects at a time, and you have the same, every project has a deadline in the next couple of weeks. So you have to split your brain in some way to write this and then write this and write this and write this. And you are, it's like going to the gym. It's like developing a muscle. When you are in the gym, you're not peaceful. You don't have peace. You have to be working. So it's to find a balance maybe between peace and chaos. Maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a certain serenity and focus, I would say, that occurs when you have so many different things to be working on. You know, that you can just say, okay, I have 5 things to do, but I need to get this one done, and you can zone in on it. So that makes sense, that entre eso y eso, hay things.
So paz and chaos. Eric?
The listening thing is very important. You have to have an open ear, I think, to take it in. I would go also with the idea of an open heart. You have to be an empathetic human, because you are creating human beings sometimes that are so massively flawed that if you have to find the humanity in these people, and if you don't have an open heart, you're going to write them with judgment already, and that's just not good writing. You want to let everyone find humanity in your characters. And airplane mode on your phone.
Oh.
For sure, because I know, like, my phone is my worst enemy. I'll turn the TV off and I'm like, oh, the phone's right there. Something has to be happening on Instagram. Something has to be happening to distract me from writing, because writing is procrastination.
Great, thank you all for your answers. Something final that I think will get us all in the same boat as far as the conversation. When we talk about the Latinx experience as writers, when we talk about we want to tell our own stories, there could be a lot of commentary around that, and also a lot of questions. What does that really mean? Are we saying that we want to be telling just Latino stories or around, which personally I'm not sure is the answer. We're all capable of writing any story. I think we're talking about points of views and having as Alex will say in our pre-meeting, a subjective perspective in what it is we want to say. So with that in mind, can you tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about your heritage background, and how it influenced your work? Good luck.
I'm more complicated at the table. My father's side is Armenian and Greek, and my mother's side is Puerto Rican and Cuban. And when I was a kid, back in the 1400s, in the 70s, my Puerto Rican grandmother was from Ponce, who was very successful for a lady at her time, clerked for a judge, and she wouldn't let us speak Spanish in the house. She said, you don't give yourself the disadvantage of that, which is a very different philosophy now, as we embrace it. And so I didn't learn Spanish in my house. I learned it later on in life, and I don't speak it especially well, even though I work with all the Mexican directors. I still write everything in English, and I'm familiar enough with Spanish that the phrase will turn. But I have this split identity of what Tony Kushner called the melting pot that didn't melt. Is I have the Armenian family and my Latino family, and for me, it's that feeling of not belonging. I think that idea of identity comes through in my work over and over and over again. And just really quick, we'll talk about it. That's how I get to the speech in On Your Feet when Emilio says, I don't know if you all saw On Your Feet, Emilio says to the guy who's telling the coordinator, he said, I'm not too sure where you think I'm from. You should look very closely at my face, because whether you know it or not, this is what an American looks like. And that's me speaking from a very subjective point of view, saying, I don't know what you think I am, but don't include me in your white conversation about what they are and they are and they are, because I'm they, whether or not I'm from here. So that's, I don't know if that answered anything.
So I grew up I was born in Orlando, but I grew up in Washington State, in Kirkland. I don't know if you know Kirkland, Sure, that's where I grew up. And also in Lexington, Kentucky. So not a lot of Puerto Ricans in Kentucky. Okay. But those are the places that I grew up, and they influenced my music so much. I started playing the violin when I was 10, and getting out into the kind of maritime and old-time music scenes in Seattle. And then when I moved to Kentucky, just started really loving bluegrass and getting so much into that music, such that when I went to college in Massachusetts at Williams College, I wrote a musical that was based on a Norwegian folk tale that I read as a kid with bluegrass music. But the theme of that, even if there weren't like Latinx people in the story specifically, that story was so much a story about those spaces in between, ni de aquí, ni de allá, those spaces in between becoming your own place, like this young woman who's on a journey to negotiate, to grow up and to negotiate what it means to be a daughter, a lover, an adventurer, an explorer. So all of those parts of me, and then as I've grown more, I lived in Costa Rica for 2 years after I graduated from school, and I was able to be in a place where I didn't have to explain myself to anybody, let alone explain myself to myself, which was very healing for me because, in Kentucky, it's like, I kid you not, in a very loving, coming from a searching place, people were like, oh, Rodriguez? Like, I've never heard a last name like that, kind of stuff in the place that I grew up. So being able to just be in a place where my Latinidad was just so normal was really great. It influenced my music, and now I sing and write a lot in English and in Spanish. So yeah, all of those things coming together to bring me to exactly where I am right
now. So I am fully Cubano. Both of my parents were born in Cuba. My mother emigrated when she was 4. They were Batista loyalists, and so when the government fell, they had to leave. It was basically that or death. So they came to Miami. My father came over. They were the opposite side. They were, hey, Castro sounds pretty good. This whole idea of, all for one sounds good, and they realized soon that it was not going too well. And they got out via the lottery, went to Spain, and then came over to Miami as well. That's where my parents met. I was born in Hialeah in Miami, so Cuba part 2. I spoke Spanish first. That was before I started to learn English. because I was, raising my abuelas and abuelos and tias and tios and 17 million cousins, people that aren't, obviously, as we know, blood cousins, just a lot of cousins. And then we moved away to Fort Lauderdale, a little further away, and it's funny how the distance of 30, 40 minutes can change your heritage very much. I started to notice, as I look back now, myself becoming Eric Ulloa to Eric Ulloa and trying to hide my last name. You can't really hide Ulloa too well because no one can pronounce it. So hiding it wasn't so good. My high school principal at graduation called me Eric Aloha on my graduation. Asked me if I was Hawaiian, and then I questioned why she couldn't spell aloha and write at school. It's on the record, you can look at the video. And then like I said, you can't spell aloha? And when I moved to New York, it was much of the same actually. My career started here as an actor. I was still an actor, I also am a writer as well. But as an actor, no one allowed me to be Latino when I first moved to New York. I remember clearly going in for things early on, like early workshops in the Heights, things like that, and they were like, "You're not Latino, they're not going to see you." That I'm like, "My last name's Ulloa, I was born in Hialeah, I can't be more Latin. You want me to bring up my abuelas and abuelos? They'll prove it to you. They'll cook you lechon that can kill." But and until On Your Feet, I had the opportunity to be a part of this gigantic Latino cast, and then it's funny, now it's the opposite side. Now it's, everyone's like, "Well, Latino, Eric Ulloa." And now I've been given permission by New York to be what I was born into, which is it's a very weird dichotomy. But and On Your Feet taught me to fall back in love with who I was and where I came from. And I wish I could go back and talk to my abuelos because they're gone, and reinvest more, and be like, "Tell me everything you know." How does that translate to my writing? My writing is always based around community. That's a big thing in my writing. It's always about community, storytelling. I know they told me millions of stories, my grandparents. I don't know if they were all true, they probably weren't, but they were great stories. So it's in my blood naturally, and it's something that's funny how it manifests as you get older and makes you maybe want to be a writer. I think it's just that community and storytelling is just inherent in me, and that when we get together, we're stronger. And that's what I was raised with. You always have a support system, you always have people around you, and the themes of humanity that come with that are big in there. So that's my long-winded human tale.
So I was born and raised in Monterrey, Nuevo León, Mexico. It's in the north of Mexico, just like 3 or 4 hours driving from Texas. But actually, I never met musical theater or writing till I was like around 19 years old. I started, originally I wanted to be a criminologist, that's the word? Like a lawyer, That actually I applied for school.
I never know when he's serious or not.
No, I'm serious. I applied for school, I get accepted, but I decided not to get in. And something just told me you have to study music. So next year, I wait 1 year, and at age 18, I started studying music composition, singing actually. I started studying singing. Then singing wasn't enough for me, and when I was half my bachelor in Monterrey, I learned about musical theater, and I decided to switch my career to composing instead of singing. And I started reading everything about musical theater and storytelling. I started writing by myself. And the first musical that I wrote was a musical about a genocide in Mexico City. So it wasn't very, oh wait, that's musical theater? Yes, musical theater is just a way to tell stories. And I decided this very weird subject that no one think that it was right for musical theater. But I never left Monterrey till I was 28 years old. That I got accepted at NYU to come here to study musical theater writing master program. And that was the first time that I actually learned the most important thing in music art theater and in storytelling, that is community and collaboration. So I started very late writing and doing music for theater, and because I think I'm like the only one born outside besides you in this table. My stories are always about struggling, finding a home. Where is that home? Is that home back in Mexico? Is that home here in New York City? Is that home really here in my heart? Is that home my family, and it's not really a physical place where it's people? What is really home? Struggling to find that home, fighting for that home, and finding that community, being part of this community here, finding my identity, being from an outsider in a place where everyone looks at me like you don't belong here. But actually, who belongs here? I mean, we all do at the same time. So I think my stories are about that. I mean, like breaking all that struggle, being an outsider, being bullied. How do you say when you're not bullied? You're bullied, right? Bullier. Being bullied when I was a kid, being always an outsider. Even I was at home, I always feel an outsider. So I think we need to find that home and that identity and that community first here, so we can spread it around.
So there are a lot of themes that come to the table based on just listening to your heritage, right? Which informs a lot of the honesty and perhaps subjectivity of how you write. You already established that so well. So out of some of the ones that immediately popped to my head, I'm going to go to you, Alex. Authentic representation, right? You're talking about, and demons, authentic representations and the demons that come with that. And the reason is because I look at you and I think of on your feet and that beautiful line, take a good look at my face because this is what an American look like. I look at bourbon, right? And the belonging sense of this human being that he's struggling with being a part of his world, inside even the theatrical world that he lives in. And even most recently in your collaboration with Eric as well, the Jekyll and Hyde, where you're inside of you, there's two ways of thinking. A lot of your work is reflecting that. What is this? What is this necessity for the issue of authentic representation or authentic belonging, authentic being in the arts?
I don't think that I know any other way. I had a very troubled childhood in a lot of different ways, a lot of abuse and a lot of abandonment, a lot of issues that I still suffer with today. I think when you talk about the things that you're saying, for me, I don't feel like I have the facility to write objectively. I'm not that good a writer, and I don't mean that with any false humility. I don't feel the tactile skill of being delicate and eloquent. With every character I'm writing, Eric helped me work on we were doing the screenplay, did the screenplay for the Wildhorn Rickus musical Jekyll and Hyde, a very dark modern version of that. That was what it's referencing. I don't ever look at a character as a character. It's me sitting in either spot, and I make the worst argument I can with one character against the other, and it's me accusing me, and it's me having to answer me, and it's trying to avoid the cliches. And the only thing that will get you there to a place of emotion or revelation or anything is telling the truth. And for me, I can't do it any other way. It all feels fake. It all feels, like pretend. Unless I put myself in the most horrible spot, like Emma Stone yelling at her father, and she says, "It's not important. You're not important. Get used to it." That's my daughter against my thumb. That's her talking to me. That's me talking to my father. So for me, it's the only way I know how to write. And that sort of place of conflict is just me finding a way to not solve, but attack the uncomfort, the discomfort, and hopefully leads to revelation. Because I feel like the more It's so funny. You think about all the things that happen in your life that were really hard or whatever, and you think, that specific thing, there are general things, abuse, but some specific thing happened to you, right? And you're like, nobody knows what that's like. If I say that, nobody's gonna understand that. And then you say this very specific thing that you think only happened to you, and everybody goes, holy shit, that happened to me. Of course that was, I mean, it was a little different, but it was mine. And now you come to a place of community, which is the energy, the exciting energy. That's why people clapped in that. I said paleontologist at the beginning. I don't manufacture the speech, this is what America, that's just me having the argument with myself, and all of a sudden the audience, Irish, Jewish, Hispanic, doesn't matter, everybody's clapping because they recognize the truth of it, and that's what we do at our best. We don't manufacture it, you know? We just, and people are like, oh, I know what that is, and then they react viscerally. So I feel like that's what it is for me, if that.
Thank you. Michelle, you in our pre-talk as well, you mentioned the same issue, a little bit of belonging, not belonging. You even introduced it here already today. And I think we brought up the word imposter syndrome, or if I did not do it with you, I did it with Alex. But I think as artists, there's always a moment when we think either we don't belong or we're not good enough to meet the standard that is established. I keep going through this because I talk to the writers, and it's always fascinating to me how sometimes from the darkest reality comes the best art. So I'm not poking on it, I'm just celebrating that it's sometimes good to be a mess or to say shit, right? And excuse me, my son around. And so this idea of belonging and coming from the perspective that we are Latinos trying to tell a story in a world, especially within the field of musical theater, that is not to make it about white or not white, but it's an American culture. It comes from the culture of the America in the United States in many ways. And so we are following a path that we fall in love with and whatnot, and sometimes it's very easy to feel we don't belong. How does that affect your music writing?
Bueno. It certainly does affect, it affects my work the most when I am freaked out and in isolation about what I have to do, about the things that I'm writing, about what I'm working on, about X, Y, Z, and it affects me the least, to bring it back to this idea of community also, it affects me the least when I share what's going on with me with other writers, because other writers have been through it. They've been at the page, they've been just looking at a blank page, feeling like they don't know what they're doing when they've been doing it for however many years, when they've had commissions from however many theaters, It happens at every stage of your career. So I definitely experience the grace of my friends and of the people who I have around me to support me, to remind me. Like sometimes I need reminding of who I am. Like sometimes I need reminding of the things that I've achieved, because I grew up in Kentucky. I went to school, I didn't study music, I just made music all the time in college. I was writing musicals, but again, I always felt so in between, or felt like I had to jump 3 times as high or run 5 times as fast with what I was doing to be able to be where I was with my peers, which was a fiction. So it's exciting now to be on the other side of a few things and to have other, parts of my career to come. I just moved to New York this year, and I moved here to write a musical for the Public Theater. They commissioned me to write a musical, which is like the coolest thing that's ever happened to me, ever. But it came, how did it come? It came from me being exactly who I am. It came from me being exactly who I am. I was writing, I was living in Chicago at the time, and I'm just gonna tell you this brief anecdote, this is good. I was living in Chicago at the time. I lived there after living in Costa Rica for a few years, in Vermont for a little bit. I was mostly making a lot of music, and I was traveling back and forth from New York to, just because I was that thirsty, and I was that hungry to find the community of musical theater writers. Musical Theater Factory is an amazing organization. They have a People of Color Roundtable, and I traveled from Chicago to attend that monthly roundtable anytime I could, because I needed once I went there, I knew that I needed that community of people. I knew I needed it. I knew I needed to be strengthened in that way. So I traveled to New York for my first Joe's Pub show, and then I traveled to New York for my second one in July of 2018, and Stephanie Ibarra came to see the show, and she took me out for a drink afterwards. And I was exhausted because I was traveling. I had done a bunch of shows in Chicago. I was at such a depleted point in my music because I was doing all of my own admin stuff. I was being the tour mom to a band of like 6 people. I had just done like a huge like queer pride event at Navy Pier and 6 other shows that went around that show, and I came to New York. It was me and my guitarist, and I didn't have anything left. I felt that, but when I got on stage, I gave just what I had. It was just me. And then afterwards, she commissioned. She was like, "I love what you did. You were. People are so hungry for the thing that you're making. You know, writing music in Spanish, just like doing exactly what you're doing. I'm gonna do something crazy. I haven't talked to my colleagues. I want to commission you to write a musical." I was like, boom. But just from me drawing from the strength of being making exactly the music that I was making. So those are the moments when all of that other outside messaging or outside negativity or outside concerns, I have to remember those moments because those are the moments when all of that outside stuff falls away completely.
And Jaime Lozano, most recently I went to see your concert, and you were celebrating those things that at some point were, you know, a conflict for you. And now it's like people are crying in your concert just listening to the music about songs from an immigrant.
Is really that bad? No, it's not. Why they were crying? Why they were crying?
Because they were inspired. Actually, people here in the audience that I know people here in the audience that are from Venezuela that just recently moved also to New York, and that they were so identified by the music that became so universal to everybody's story. Tell me about what inspires you in composing and telling these stories.
Everything inspires me. Actually, I don't believe in inspiration in the way that it's like magic, like, oh, I inspire, I need to go now write because the inspiration just came down. No, I think that writing is more like, it's un oficio. It's something that you have to do every single day for 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours. I mean, you have to write and compose every single day for an amount of time, so you can develop that muscle and you can develop your brain, like splitting in all those ideas, so you can find ways to put what you see out there inside you and then put it again out there. I think it's something that you have to do and do and do. I mean, how do you learn writing and how do you find inspiration? You learn writing just writing, and you find inspiration just trying to have open ears and open eyes the whole time. Because all the stories are already there. You're not gonna create a new story. All the stories are out there. You just have to take them and make them yours, and the most important thing, being honest to yourself, and let those stories go back out. But I think that you find inspiration or motivation in every single moment and every single person in life.
Eric, you are a performer, and I met you being on Broadway. So performing, singing, even going on for Emilio himself, right? And so what is the transition like for you, and what do you bring from your experience of being an actor, being a 8 times a week performer into your writing?
What do I bring to it? They both inform each other so much, so very much. Acting makes me a better writer, writing makes me a better actor. I'll flip it backwards first. Writing makes me go into an audition room and going in for things so much easier. Because I now sit behind the table at times and I go, oh, it's so much not about it's just about you walking into a room and just being your authentic, real self. And I'm like, oh, ding, there's a light bulb. Took 38 years to get that one. But I got it. And then on the acting and the writing, it allows me to call out the BS in myself when I'm writing. If I'm writing a scene, if there was a camera on my wall, I swear they would commit me to an asylum because I fully act out all of my scenes in my apartments and will take on a character voice, whatever it is, to fully understand how these work, to throw myself into it. If I say a line out loud and I am tripping on the language, that is not a well-written line. It is not well, and I've done so many shows that are like that. That you can, I always say you can kind of tell sometimes when someone has never performed their own material or just coming from a writing point of view because it flows off the tongue a lot easier in certain ways. So that helps me out with things like dialogue, stuff like that. And writing came from the acting because I became a writer at a moment where it became a necessity. I had a year of my life when I was 30 that I could not get booked for a thing. No one wanted me, no one called me, but nothing. And I was like, oh, I've come to New York at 23. I thought life was good, and I had failed hard. And I was sitting at and I say this not name dropping, I say it because he is a dear friend, and he literally gave me advice that changed my life. But I was sitting with Billy Porter at a friend's house having dinner, and I was complaining about this, and he said, so? I went, what do you mean so? I'm like, this is my career. So what? Stop complaining, do something. I said, I do a terrible Billy Porter, but you get it. He would slap me right now. But he said it, he goes, well then go make something. He goes, is all you do audition? And I go, no. He goes, go be somebody, do something, stop being lazy. And I literally left there and I was like, oh, I need to do something. And I just started realizing that I was seeing a lot of shows and I was leaving unmoved. And to me, if I leave the theater and I don't need to talk about it, or maybe have a drink with somebody to talk about it, or digest it or whatever, I don't know that that's, I think theater lingers. To me, theater, there's a 3-act structure, as my mentor Alex here taught me very well. But I think there's also like a 4th act, and that's when you leave. And that opens up itself afterwards. Like I said earlier about slave play, there's a 4th act still room in there. I don't know what it means yet, but it's there. And that, it came from that. So, writing was necessity of creativity. I had a voice I had to get out. And they both help each other, man. Everyone's like, well, you can never steer away from, like, no, I need them both right now. They're both vital to me.
Alex's favorite quote after we open a show is, to what's next. Yeah. And so, what is next for us, right in the next scene? What does that mean? You guys have worked together. What is the role of a mentor? You mentioned the word mentor, we mentioned the word community. What then within the Latinx experience is our job and our duty and our responsibility to go make something, to do something, and what is it that we want to do? How do we write the next scene? This is for whoever wants to take it.
I think things like this are the beginnings of writing the next scene, allowing people to see, 5 Latino faces up here create things. To say, yeah, we're writers, we are producers, we are directors. There are not enough. When I think about that, I was thinking about who are the Latino producers out there that I was like, I can't think of a lot of them, and or people of color in general in the producing world, directing world. It's not enough of that. And I think by being here, we allow the next chapter. By you work with, I'll tell you a little bit, like with mentoring programs, and when I visit with kids now in schools, I do my pieces. It's the first thing I say is I tell them I'm a Latino actor, writer, all stuff. And yes, look, when we're on your feet on stage, there are kids looking up at us, seeing 31 Latino actors on stage performing on Broadway, and saying to them naturally in that thing, yeah, you can do it. We exist. We're here. Here's the baton.
I think I just heard something today, just in the green room before we came here. So I sort of volunteered to do a class to teach screenwriting at School of Visual Arts, SVA, and Miguel Solomon is one of my students. He's right there. Raise your hand, Miguel. And Miguel just told me today. So one, he was one of my students, and he's incredibly talented. And he went on to make a short film out of our class, which did incredibly well. One festival is kind of an HBO thing, and he's just thriving. He's unbelievable. But then I was on stage were in the theater with Eric during On Your Feet, and we started talking on the breaks about writing, and he showed me his play, 26 Pebbles, and I knew he could write. And that interested me, and then I liked who he was, and so when it came time for Jekyll and Hyde and I wanted an assistant, I said, do you want to come in? But it wasn't like, he broke the story with me. We went through scenes together. We ate every day at the same Italian restaurant.
Every day.
And ate the same meal every day. The same bottle of wine every day until we got the whole story done. That's a true story. It costs so much money. It's actually a budget line in the Jekyll and Hyde. It's Paul and Jimmy's restaurant. That's true. But Miguel just told me before he got here, so every month at my house, I do a salon. You guys are welcome. I do a salon for writers, and it's not competitive, and it's not, they come to my house at 8 o'clock, I open my wine fridge, we sit in my office, people bring pages, or ideas, or stories. Sometimes people bring something, a screen, because I'm lucky enough to have a movie screen and sound in my office, and they'll screen the films they've done, and we cheer each other on. And the amazing part is it's everybody from total novice. I have like MJ, who's a young lady who's just first year of college, and I have Derek Delgado, who did In and of Itself, which is now going to be a film that Frank Oster, I don't know if any of you guys saw that, it's genius, to Rodrigo Garcia, who's a very famous showrunner. And we just bullshit, and we're as tough on the new people as we are on each other, and it's all love. And then I was just talking to Miguel before he came in here, and he was saying that now he does it for some time. You do a salon at your house now. And I think that's amazing, right? Because we're doing it not to get money. Matter of fact, in mine, I have a Yankees mug. I'm a big Yankee fan. And everybody puts in whatever they can put in. They put in $1, it's $1. They put in 20, it's 20, it's 100. And we take the money and we give it to a different charity every time we do it. And it's just love. It's just a room full of love. But that he's doing it in his place. That Eric and I got to work. So it's more than just talking. It's more than just being here. It's saying, oh, you're interesting. You're like, I want to work with these guys right now. Like, what are we doing? It's making the work happen and not just representing and talking about. All due respect, I get your point. But it's more than that. It's us getting together and saying, yeah, shouldn't we be doing the Pans Labyrinth? We gotta call Guillermo. Like, we gotta work on that. It's about something that happens from here with you, whoever's in the business, with us up here, and we say, yeah, let's try another, and then it grows. More than just saying, we need more Latinos represented, we need more. It has to be more than that. It has to be what Billy Porter said. It has to be, yes, we're all successful in one way or another. Now get the hell out there and do something. And I hope that works for everybody in this room. I think that's crucial.
And we'll continue on this topic because I think it's exactly why we're here. But I want you, if it's okay, Alex, to piggyback also in your own mentors, because we talked briefly about how Alejandro has been the same that you're doing for Miguel and for Eric and hopefully for the rest of our team, that you have had that support as well.
Yeah, I've been incredibly lucky. So I wrote a play called Still Life that got to Alejandro Iñárritu. He hired me to write a film called Beautiful with Javier Bardem that he had done. I wrote the first few drafts. And my partner Nico, who worked with Miguel on his short film, I brought him in. He also won the Academy Award. We wrote Birdman together, and we became friends. Alejandro, we now worked on Beautiful, Birdman, Revenant, and now the new one, which by the way has the scene of the student that wraps himself in the flag. That's what you were talking about, right? Yeah, I think. We'll talk about it. But anyway, oh God, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Everybody delete. But Alejandro was there. I directed my first short film, and Alejandro was in my basement with me, walking me through the edit. I broke story with Guillermo del Toro. That was incredible. His energy is unbelievable. I broke story with Alfonso Cuarón. Like Rodrigo, like these guys, my whole Mexican mafia. These guys have been so generous and so firm, so, it's just, you're gonna get truth, and if you're not strong enough for it, go away. Because they're not gonna kiss your ass. They want you to be your best, and if they respect you, they're gonna be hard on you. If they don't, they're gonna say, it's great.
The act of nurturing and building that community.
Helping them, there's the thing. He didn't just say he was a mentor, he stood in my basement and helped me edit. It's the act, I want to bring that back. It's the act of doing. Mentorship is the act of doing, creating something else, or having your mentee create something on their own. I went to Eric's reading of his musical. He asked me for an opinion. I asked him to look at my stuff. He gives me his opinion. It's the act of doing, not just talking, not just saying hi, not just showing up, of creating something new. It's the only way the seeds grow, I think.
Yeah.
I think that applies not just for life. I mean, it applies for life. It's about doing. I mean, we were having this workshop the last week with these kids from Argentina that they were like acting or pretending. And it's not about acting. It's not about pretending to do something. It's about just doing it. I mean, we can pretend that we are writing and just talk about it. But I mean, a lot of people do that actually. It's very different to actually write and put your stuff out there and share it. And just, you know, like toparte con puertas, you know, like hit against the wall and people saying no to your work a bunch of times, many times. And eventually you're gonna find someone who's gonna open that door for you. And that door is gonna stay open not just for you, you know, for all the people that is in your side and all the people coming behind you. Because this is about doing it and doing it together. It's not about doing it by yourself. It's not a competition. It's not about who is better than the other one. It's about, again, creating a community, telling stories and doing it together. I think that's important. That as a team, we can push these stories forward all the way up there.
I think we have grew it to the place where we want to open it up to you guys, right? So we have this incredible group of very valuable, diverse voices that is also very united. And so I want to spend a good 10 minutes receiving your questions and furthering the conversation. Yes.
How do you overcome? I mean, is it like for me, like personally, someone that's been, like on journey, has been that I grew up being like born and raised in New York City, but I grew up in all white world. I married into it. So, and I realized in that process, I went to school where I was a token, and I realized in that process it was all socioeconomic. And so how have you all been able to kind of deal with the socioeconomic barriers that might have impeded your ability to learn or have you ever had any barriers or how would you?
Well, I can say that I couldn't have been more broke. I lived on the street for a little while, for a few months. When I first was looked at by an actor who just passed away, who I love dearly, who was my fairy godfather. His name is Danny Aiello, who was moonstruck and who was nominated for an Oscar for doing the right thing. Danny read a play that I'd written. I was literally sleeping on a used mattress in Kensington, Brooklyn, in a room that was no bigger than this area right here. And I wrote this play, and he read it, and he did it. And I guess all I can say is I worked my ass off writing the play and putting my heart on it. And I was lucky enough to have somebody who was an agent show it to somebody else, who showed it to Danny, and then I got a call. So for me, I didn't have the socioeconomic problem. I was broke. I didn't get to school. I didn't go to graduate school. I didn't get to go to school for theater. I didn't go to school. I went to college for 2 years before I had to drop out. So all my education came from reading books and watching things and trying to see things. So it's hard, but you just do you. You just do you and put yourself out there in whatever capacity you can. If you can't afford a graduate school, you write the play. You stage a reading in a corner. Somebody will always find really good work. Like I just trust in the gods of storytelling that somebody will find a work that needs to be told.
Interesting enough, I just want to add a little bit, because with R.Evolución Latina, our nonprofit organization, we do a summer camp every year, and we see through the kids the best stories to tell. And the students that come in and that are nurturing our kids end up writing songs inspired on the stories that they were shared with the kids. And so I think, again, this is why I kind of frame a little bit at the beginning in the idea that we should not give up because there's an obstacle, because theater is about conflict. And sometimes those conflicts are exactly what propels us into succeeding stories. So.
Yes.
Hi. How can you, as a writer, overcome this? I don't want to just call it racism, but this. You're a writer. You are Latino. You're a person of color, and you're writing, and you end up having to go with the status quo by hiring Angelina Jolie to play that part. How can you, as a writer of color, as a person that's representing a community, overcome that standard American accent, looking white enough or famous enough to be the person that's going to be in the film or theater or?
I faced a lot of those pressures, and it's coming from the outside. That's coming from the outside. It can be a pressure cooker, especially as a young woman. And my encouragement and what I'm trying to say to myself and also to my friends who might have similar concerns is that creating the room, like creating your own space for your own self to write exactly what you want to write, and then only extending that space to the people that you want. I'm going on tour at the end of February with my Micha music project, and it's going to be a co-production between Joe's Pub and the Mobile Unit at the Public Theater, and I only invited, like, there's so many amazing musicians that I could have invited that are like world-class esto, world-class lo otro, but my focus was making sure that I had other storytellers that were exciting to me, that I wanted to invite into this like really intimate space. It can be so intimate to write something, and I only want to share that with the people exactly who I want to. So I'm excited to be going on tour with a couple of other amazing Latinos who I feel like are aligned, not only just because we're Latinos, but because we're tied with our values. So for me, I'm really excited right now about taking my time to think about what are my values, what are the ways that I want to share that in my work, and not only share my values in my work, because again, we're also writing a lot of different kinds of characters who have a lot of different kinds of experiences, but to have with you the people who share your values of how you want to move things forward. Because doesn't matter the scale of it, to just follow that theme, like to do that, to have that act of only moving that forward in the way that you desire, you'll attract more of what you desire. That's what I'm trying to tell also myself.
I think I just want to add one thing because of the film element in this, is that I can tell you I'm working on a film that I'm going to direct a feature of My Place Still Life, and I had an actress who very much wanted to do it, who if I said her name, you would know exactly who she is, and I got told by Hollywood that she just won't get you. She wasn't Latina, but she won't get you the money. So you're going to run into this no matter what, even harder if you're Latina or Latino, or if you're of color or Asian or black or whatever. Like, it's always going to be even harder. I think it gets back again to what's becoming my boring theme of this thing, which is due. So in a reading, when I put together a reading of a play or a movie or a musical, I can cast Latinos. I can, exactly, as Michelle said, I can do as much as I can do. Maybe if I become a really famous director one day, I'll be like, I was almost going to curse. You know, go to Kansas. Because at least you can do, and then that'll extend, and it does. Melissa Pereira, just in the Heights, I just met with her because she's in the film that I'm writing for somebody else. So the world does grow, and you know, we do as much as, I think that's the point, right? Yeah. So I'm just reinforcing the point, which is we can do as much as we can do. And then we're going to run into a wall, but maybe our heads against the wall, but maybe we can put our head through it and let a few people in behind us.
Yeah.
Right.
More questions? Yes.
So when you're drawing on raw human emotion and you feel that plethora of emotion, do you ever tone back for fear that readers will take that pain as wanting more sympathy rather than just raw emotion?
I don't believe in emotions. I think a writer, I don't know what I think, a writer or thing in writing an emotion. You write for a character, you write for a specific moment, and that story is gonna lead you to, it's gonna lead the character to tell a story, and the audience is gonna get a different emotion from that. But it's not that you're writing emotions. A writer never writes an emotion, I think so, no.
I'll piggyback on that. There's something about, and this is totally a preference and a taste. When I am reading something or watching something and the person's going through it, just bawling their face off, and I tend to sit back and all of a sudden, for some reason, a weird wall goes up, and I go, well, they're crying enough for me and them. To me, it's really fascinating to watch somebody process through a very hard emotion. To watch, I'll get more. 2 nights ago, I was watching season 2 of Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. It's, it is what it is. But there was a scene where Tony Shalhoub is seeing his daughter for the first time on TV, and the way he looked at that TV set and the pride he had in her, I was a mess on my couch crying. He didn't cry, he didn't think. There's a real human thing that's real for all of us. Yeah. He was working through anger at what she did behind his back, the time period, and that his daughter is a dirty comic, and eventually arrived at pride. And I'm going to start crying right now. It floored me,
But even then you put the pride in. So this is exactly right, both things. And what they're saying is, if you write emotion, then you're telling the audience what to feel. Once I tell you what to feel, you can only feel that much, was my interpretation of what I'm being emotional about. What you want, what Eric is saying is, I doubt, Tony Shalhoub made it said I wasn't thinking about pride at all, but he left the space empty. And when you leave the emotional space empty, the audience leans in and fills it with what they need to fill it with. And that's the difference. So I agree, you don't write emotion. Emotion just comes with what you write. It's more interesting to guess what you're going through than to say, cry now, or,
While we wait, I'll just add to that, as a director, also the idea is, right, you can also not act emotion. So you act action, you do an action, you have to fight. And so the idea of two opposite thoughts that sort of collide, the conflict that keeps them fighting with, you're not the actor saying, I need you to cry now. No, it's like, I need you to stand up for yourself and slap him, whatever that action can be. And in that, emotion is born. So how do you create opposition? How do you create opposition in your writing? How do you create that empty space that the audience or the director or the actor feels in?
I think it's like a paradox, but to create that empty space, you have to fill the room. What I'm saying is being as specific as you can, being like fucking specific, like a lot of details in the writing.
You're allowed to say it.
It's because my son is there.
Okay.
Because it's my son.
One collective.
Yeah, and being specific. And I learned that from my son. Actually, we are all storytellers since the moment that we are born. Every single day I see my son with his toys, like making sounds and making different voices, and he's just telling stories and being so specific with everything that is happening. And I'm just so amazed, and I start crying. Even I say that I don't write emotion, I'm the most emotional people ever. I mean, I cry for everything, for every single thing, every single day, every single minute. I mean, I cry the whole time, right now. No, but it's because that is what art do. I mean, art, it's about moving things, about creating chaos, and at the end of the chaos, that chaos giving you peace. But it's about giving all the details, being specific. And as Alex said at the very, very beginning, that when you're so specific, another person, even he hasn't lived exactly the same, they feel related with that because of those details about being specific. Yeah.
I wanna take advantage of the 45 seconds we have. So Gabriela, one question?
Because you said about the specificity. So at what point do you as a writer are able to let go of your project as opposed to because you can keep working on it over and over and tweak it.
Never.
Never.
When you rip it out of your hands, like Sophie's Choice, they're like, I'm taking this one. You're like, not that one, take the other one.
And you will go and hear and see and read your play and see it again and go,
Why? How many performances do we do? Like every night, I'd be like, that's what I wrote.
You know, it's written, it's out there, and it's over. And
The excitement of that too is that there's songs that I've written, oh my gosh, like 10, 11 years ago, that I wrote about very specific matters. That then 5 years later, I'm like, oh, this is hitting me in a new way. I sing it again, now 10, 11 years later, it's like, oh, it's there can also be joy there of like letting your work wash over you and being able to experience it in different ways and have it mean different things at different stages of your life and make the tweaks or not make the tweaks if you have the possibility to do it. But yeah, there's so much joy there as well.
It always gets so good when we only had the 45 seconds. So let me say to all of you guys, first of all, can we give them all please a big round of applause? To all of you guys, thank you for being here and being so cohesive, and relevant. But before we go, here's my last challenge. I want you to write the next scene. Each one of you, I want you to write the impossible dream. So to you, in the next 10 years, representing our community, what is your quote-unquote impossible dream that you're writing right now? How would you like to see us evolve?
I can cheat. Because just don't tell anybody. Again. But we're now very close to being on our way to make a film of On Your Feet. But the film is entirely different than the musical. And I get to do something, and I was with Gloria last weekend in Emilio, and we talked about it, and they're open and they're honest, and we're gonna do something extremely different. And God willing, it'll be a film more about a time, place, and a people, using Gloria and Emilio as the protagonists and not a straight biopic. So it could be thrilling if I don't mess it up. Guillermo del Toro's favorite thing to say, or he said when we finished the outline once together, he said, "We have it now. It's perfect. The only thing we can do is pick it up." And so I have a chance to do that. And if that pulls that sort of Latino bio into a place where it's real, just movie storytelling, that would be really exciting for me. So I'm challenged. I'm thrilled, but that's what I'm doing.
You get the exclusive of that one here first. Quick answers.
Okay, so this musical that I'm working on right now is a commission for the mobile unit at the Public Theater, which is a free program that has historically brought Shakespeare shows to all 5 boroughs of the city in prisons, community centers, libraries, homeless shelters, with the idea that theater and culture is for everyone. So for me, when it comes to being able to do my favorite thing in the world, which is write music and make theater, and then also just in a way that aligns with my values, being able to bring shows to where my New York parents were born in the Bronx and in Brooklyn. I mean, for me, that's living the dream when it comes to creating stories for our communities and for non-traditional audiences. I think that's once I finish this show, si Dios quiere, if I get to keep doing that, then I will already be living my dream. I'm living my dream right now by doing that work.
I guess I say this as a Latino man, as a gay man, the idea where stories will start to be told where my race isn't an obstacle, my sexuality isn't an obstacle. It just happens to be a Latino family. It just happens to be a gay, 2 fathers and their kid. It just happens to be that. And the story has nothing to do with the struggle of that. We are just part of the story of America, and it's not about us fighting to enter the story of America.
Amen.
I would like to add some Latino producers to this table,
yes.
Some Latino actors, more Latino writers. Put some food and some contract and sign.
And we will be working on that. Thank you everybody for being with us today. Thank you for all your time. Follow us at R.Evolución Latina.org. Please make sure that we continue to follow of these incredible artists, these incredible writers. Thank you so much.